The following episode may contain spoilers for the game Frosthaven.
Welcome to a master's degree in Rolling Terribly, episode 7. It's a special episode. Oh, right, I gotta probably introduce Gaz. Gaz, say hi, Gaz.
Wow, that was the weirdest intro I've had. But hi, am I the special episode?
You are the special episode. That's right.
Yay.
All about you because you're all about being special. So today's actually a special episode because we didn't actually play. Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, we couldn't play this week, which meant that we can't record this particular episode about what happened. But what we have decided to do is record a special episode, kind of like a bonus, where we're actually going to, when this happens, because there are going to be times where one of us is on holiday or we can't actually play for any reason, we're going to pick various topics to discuss. And in this case, I've decided to look into variants and house rules for Frosthaven, which there are some official ones in the back of the rulebook, but also online, which I have found is a bit of a viper's pit with differing opinions. And I would like to throw some of these variants at Gaz and see what he has to say about them. But first, I think Gaz actually wanted to clear something up with a comment that he received on Reddit.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I will say I'm looking forward to this can of worms or pit of vipers, as you mentioned it, and opening up and asking what the internet thinks that we should do. So that should be a fun discussion. I wanted to respond to, I believe it's pronounced Iron and Wine on Reddit, who did point out something around the Geminate that I mentioned in episode 5. Thank you for highlighting that. I did actually pick it up before I started the next scenario. So and I'll call it out, I only cheated once, although I don't know if it's cheating, it just played wrong. Because I was like, I got level 2, I got this new kind of cool melee ability, I don't want my range stuff, I'm going to dip it out. And then played one scenario. Saw at the start of the next scenario we were playing, I was just looking at my card and saw a 7 and 7 and went, that means 7 and 7. That doesn't mean like 6 and 8. So I really do appreciate you calling that out, because that's the kind of stuff that I really need. Like, I won't say that we want everyone to do, but I definitely like to know if I'm doing something wrong. Because, way back from episode 1, I think I mentioned, want to play it as close to the rules as possibly can. So yeah, really do appreciate that. But yes, also did pick it up and fixed it and won't be making that mistake. But it does make me a bit sad now.
It's fine. Look, none of us knew it was even happening. In fact, when that response came, I was like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. And you're like, no, I've already fixed it. I know what it is. And I'm like, I'm glad you do. Like, I have no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I think at the time when I figured it out as well, I did think about telling everybody, but I was like, then I'll have to explain how my class works, and I'll have to go down this rabbit hole of explaining what things are just to tell them that I did something slightly wrong, but I'm not going to do it wrong anymore. So I just went, I'll just fix this and no one will know the difference. So
yeah, well, we're in the process of setting up a Patreon where basically people can just pay money to tell you what you did wrong. And it's like a Gaz only episode where you sit there and constantly talk about all the things you got wrong. And I think it would be a great success.
Yeah, it's going to be heaps of fun.
So what I wanted to talk a little bit about, Gaz brought this up a little while back when we were playing. He was talking about traditionally in Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, I believe Jaws of the Lion, and other games. Whenever you level up, you pick, another card from the level, from the next level that you'll add into your pool of cards. And respecking has come up as, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually change the spec of your class and your character and actually play with different cards? And he actually pointed to almost a screen grab of the rule book. Now, I'd kind of forgotten the last parts of the rule book where they're talking about random scenarios and after the outpost phase. And it's actually got an area on variants, and that was actually one of them. And they go over things like, casual and open information and all of that. And I thought it would be interesting that has actually been thought of. We haven't actually implemented any of those in the game, but it is there. And I'm not one to say, no, we have to do this perfectly by this. It's a group consensus and it's kind of, it's about fun, right? And that's the argument of a lot of people who do come up with a lot of house rules that I have found online, is they're finding things that make it fun for their group. So that's what I would find rather interesting. And I'm actually going to start at the very first one at the moment, which is casual mode, right? So basically, it's kind of like you playing in a practice kind of scenario, kind of like you don't get any kind of rewards and all the campaign effects are ignored. No event is resolved and all of that kind of stuff. I think it's more so for maybe getting used to playing a certain way, but I'm not too sure why that's actually there.
So you do go through the scenarios as per normal. So you still
You actually
progress
play any
through-
unlocked scenarios. So it's kind of like going back.
Can
to
you
play
unlock
an
new
older
scenarios?
one. No, I don't believe so.
You don't get anything out of it.
No time passes, no events. Does not get any experience, loot, treasure, check marks, personal quest progression. Yeah, I think it's just a
Okay.
practice mode or something like that. I don't think
wonder-
it's an actual variant.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. I wonder if when I've been playing Gloomhaven with one of my mates, whenever we unlock a new class, one of the things that we've found, because if you're really high, I might get this wrong, prosperity or reputation, one of the two in Gloomhaven, when you start a new character, you start at a higher level. So we're pretty much at the end of the game. And so any new character we unlock or starts at around level 6, I'd say. So what happens is you kind of go in and then you've got to level up 6 times and pick all these cards, but you've never played the character. I think I've talked about this being one of the downsides of starting higher level, is that you don't get to feel out what the character does before you're picking up what kind of path you want to take. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll unlock the character and just get a feel for it. We'll go to the first mission. Right? I think we've done that first mission like 30 times now, right? Like we just know it. And it's not so much because we're doing
this is digital, isn't it?
Yeah, this is on digital. Yeah.
Which is probably easier to just do.
Oh, yeah, because you just click and it's there, right? Like, there's no like, hey, Detty, go set this up for me. I want to do this mission again. So it's, but because we just keep redoing that, it means that we get to do like a test one. So, and we've done them before where we've completely just whiffed it, and I felt like, wow, I didn't realize what I was supposed to do with this character, and we're all going to die. But it didn't matter because it was the first one. Interestingly, though, just thinking about this casual mode, you kind of can't do that in Frosthaven, because every time you go back to Frosthaven, time will pass.
Well, that's why I'm saying this casual mode, time doesn't pass.
That's what I mean. So, like, what we are doing in our digital playthrough of Gloomhaven, of just picking the first mission and doing it again and again, you can't do in Frosthaven.
Why not?
Well, because when you go back to Frosthaven, time will pass.
But it doesn't.
No, I'm saying in general, if you don't play by casual.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm saying if we were just like, hey, you know what? Let's go do the first mission again.
Yeah. I suppose it's like a toggle. I suppose it's like a toggle where you're like, we're on casual mode now. Everything we do does not impact the campaign part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. But you didn't need that in Gloomhaven because there was no time to pass.
True, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, the way that they're allowing you to go and, I guess, redo a scenario with the idea that you don't get anything out of it. But it also means that you're not going to mess up your Frosthaven kind of outpost, which is interesting. Again, just something that it just didn't need to exist in Gloomhaven.
Now, on your concern regarding high prosperity, starting a new character, and yes, you have to level up multiple times and choose cards every time, right? Someone did mention online when this was brought up that whenever they get a brand new character, it does say specifically when it comes to the rules, you may level up to that level prosperity, and you can actually choose the level at level 1. And this particular group does that. They every time they do it, they just go, nah, we're going straight from level 1, and they want to feel that slow burn progression as they're building up and getting used to that character playstyle. What are your thoughts on that? Or do you think that that's maybe a waste?
No, I think that's really good, and we tried that once. The problem with it is that along with leveling up comes more hit points. So what happened was we had a party of level like 7, 8, 9 characters, so the difficulties pumped right up, and then you inject this level 1 character, and I'm pretty sure the one I was playing was a low HP one, so I had 6 HP, and I was just getting one shot by everything because everything was at max difficulty. So you'd also need to scale back the difficulty to make sure that the character could actually survive. So that's what I would do, and I know we're not talking about house rules here, but if you wanted to do that, I'd almost give the character the full leveled up hit points, but not the cards. So go, because I mean, if anything, you're just disadvantaging yourself, right? So you go, I'm going to play this character with the hit points that it should have at the level I'm supposed to be, but I'm not going to unlock any of the new cards yet. I'm going to do a mission first to see how it feels, and then maybe I'll do one or two, and you could slowly work your way through that. Like there's you're not gaining any advantage there other than the fact that you don't have to randomly make decisions based on zero information. So I'd say that would be a fine way of doing it.
It would be interesting because we haven't reached a stage where anyone's retired anything yet. And we haven't had to level up anything brand new yet. So we haven't really, had a reason to have this discussion and work out exactly how we were going to do it. But it'll be interesting when that finally gets to it, exactly what we decide to do. The next one is temporary enhancements. So that's a variant in there where, if you remember from Gloomhaven, now I'm not including the removable sticker set, but when you spend a lot of money on your gold, hard-earned gold, to increase the enhancements of some of these cards, adding a +1 or adding a curse effect to it, etc., they're permanent. So that when that character's re-rolled, they're part of the kit already. That character already sort of starts with some of these enhancements. Temporary enhancements makes the cost cheaper, but they're temporary in that when you retire the character, they're gone and you remove them. Any thoughts on this at all?
I think it's probably better. I think the idea that the stickers stay on there for the next person to play it sounds cool, but comes up so infrequently that it's not worth not being able to explore the cool world of the enhancements because they are so cost prohibitive. So and I can only talk to Gloomhaven because we haven't unlocked this part in Frosthaven, right, of enhancing the cards.
Yep.
In Gloomhaven, it's so expensive, right? And you're really only upgrading a level 1 to maybe a level 3 card if it's a really basic upgrade. And that's like put a jump on it, right? Or put a +1 move. If you want to add anything to a higher card, it's to like 1, 2, 300 gold. And it's usually not worth it. Like there are corner cases where it's really, really worth it. But so it just means that, those cards come back around easier for someone who starts that class. But again, I was talking about, usually by that time, you're starting at level 5, 6, 7 anyway. So having a jump or a +1 or something like that on a level 1 card, isn't that impactful?
Yeah, okay.
So it's kind of like, if you can allow people to have more enhancements on more cards and then they go away, I feel like that means that experience of playing that character for everyone on all their characters is better. And then the next person can just have their own experience when they go through that character.
This is a thing where I think it'll actually relate to a lot of the house rules and variants that will be coming up, right? Is how much, by making them cheaper, right, for going temporary, knowing that we're probably not going to replay the characters anymore once it's a one and done dusted kind of thing, you're potentially going to get more bang for your buck from your enhancements. Is that going to make the game a lot easier to the point where it's, everyone's getting too strong?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point, and a caveat that I will put on me saying that it sounds better is if they're ridiculously cheap, then no, I don't think they still should have a cost associated, and I don't really want you to look at it because I don't want to spoil it for whatever like Frosthaven's going to throw us.
I don't know how much they are. I haven't looked into any of that. It's just more at the bottom of this. They're just saying calculate the normal enhancement costs, include any discounts. I don't know where from. Next, if the action has at least one previous enhancement, reduce the cost by 20, and finally reduce the cost by 20%, rounded up. Now, obviously, that's just a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, look, I think that's not, and again, I can only go by Gloomhaven prices, so we're assuming an old economy. In that instance, I feel like that would be fine. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. All right, interesting. I guess we won't know. We won't be able to know until we see them, and we have no idea how that's going to happen. We can. I know they're in there because there's a sticker sheet. That's literally the only reason. And obviously, they were a big part of the original Gloomhaven. Okay, so
we're never going to take them out, right? Like we've talked about this, but before it's like they were only ever going to add or modify stuff. They weren't just going to rip stuff out because I don't think anything in Gloomhaven was inherently broken.
Yeah, one of the other ones is reduced randomness, where the ×2 multiplier
chaos all the time
doesn't exist anymore, and it becomes a +2, and then the null becomes a -2.
Look, I I wouldn't play with this because one of the things that I love about dice and amDirt is what we're all about, right? Embrace the fact that you will roll terribly at the worst possible time.
Mm.
I love that, but yes, I completely see that being a really good way to smooth that out. And I know that there are people who play in a space where if they draw the miss at the wrong time, they're more likely to fudge it to be like, I don't want that to happen because, we don't have much time to play, or that's just not how we want to play a game, rah rah. We don't want to have to repeat the whole thing because we drew the wrong miss. I feel like this variant is better for those people than just ignoring the card and drawing the next one.
Yeah.
I think the modifier deck is such an amazing way to add a slight amount of variance to what is static damage. Because one of the problems with any game where you just know all the info is that you can just math it out, right? Like you can, if you knew how much damage you were going to do all the time, and also with the monsters, knew how much they were going to do, you could just get into that analysis paralysis because there's no reason not to and go, hang on, we've all just played our cards, we can work out what happens here.
Yeah.
Like you can just do it because there's no random. Whereas with the modifier deck, both you and the monsters, it's just completely, even a +1 or a -1 can change that. So
does the fact that there is that miss and that crit, they still have the shuffle icon on them. Does that change any of that? So it's not full perfect information. It still will divvy it up a little bit where the advantage obviously is the crit is a +2. You have an extra +2 in there, but you also have the risk of an extra -2 in there. And only one of them will generally come out.
Oh, I think that whether you play with this variant or not, the modified deck makes it so you don't have perfect information.
Okay,
I'm more saying if you remove the modified deck and didn't have anything in that place, so when, hey, we've got enough Euro-style puzzle aspects to the game, we don't need a dice or a randomizer because that tends to be what puts people off that stuff, then you do have perfect information and the game gets wonky. That's why I think the modified deck and the fact that you can modify it by adding different cards to an almost deck build in a sense, I think is just such a cool part of the game. But look, I like this variant for people who want that slightly less random. I think it's perfectly fine, and it doesn't really mess with any of the core pieces. I don't think it makes it easier or harder.
The crits are more fun, and fun and misses are more fun. Like you got to take the highs and the highs and the lows and the lows.
Yeah, if somebody was, we're going to take out the miss and replace that with a -2, but we're going to keep the crit in there, then I'd be like, oh, hang on, now you just why don't you just take all the negatives out, right?
Why don't you just say you won and play a different game? Okay, open information. Obviously, communication with playing cards is intentionally supposed to be a little bit, cryptic. It says, with this variant, parties who want fewer restrictions can share exactly which cards they have in hand and discuss specific details about their plan during selection, which is normally disallowed by the limits of communication. It's not a recommended way to play the game, but some parties may prefer this play style.
So this is a lot how you play digital. Now, maybe because I'm playing with 2 people, so just me and one of my mates, which means that we both control 2 characters, so that's what we're choosing to do. And being able to control 2 characters is such an advantage, being able to plan your turns around that. And because at any one time you can actually just click on the class and see what cards they have remaining in their hand, you can also tell what people can and can't do. So we are playing with we don't tell people what we do, like each other. We don't go like, I'm going to use this card. We've learnt each other's cards by now with most of the characters. So again, I don't think this is a bad variant. I wouldn't play with it just simply because it's not how I choose to play. It does make the game easier, which again, we have been discussing this in the past. We are just barely scraping through most of these scenarios, and a flip of a card the wrong way or a couple of bad decisions, we could be repeating them all. I can completely see how people might just went, you know what, I want a slightly easier version. I just want to kind of, let's work through this as a group puzzle and let's go from there.
Yeah, just roll a drifter basically and we'll just bring one of those.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. So, but no, I think that this is not something that fundamentally breaks the game. And look, we've talked about this before. the problem with hidden information, and this happens in almost every game that has hidden information in this sense, is that people start creating these weird codes for things, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I need, are you going fast? Oh, I'm going fast-ish. Like, oh, is that like kind of fast or like really fast? And like, oh, fast for me. And so like you just, it's, you don't say it and you try to not have those conversations all the time, but it just tends to end up being really silly. Like,
It's true. Well, in Gloomhaven, we had this running joke where it was like, "Are you legal?" And it was like, "I am not legal." And it was like, "Oh, okay." And it was like, it was always hovering around that 18, right? Or do you have your seniors yet? Or there was just these funny kind of things, and we were laughing about it. But yeah, it's a little bit too specific.
yeah, it just ends up being kind of like, well, you may as well tell me roughly where you're going, and that's what. That's basically that. That's just like, oh, we don't want to do this variant, but we're going to introduce some kind of innuendo that tells us anyway.
Yeah, yeah. This is probably the one that I think I'm the most excited by trying, but will never try. And it's called Permanent Death. So, yeah, when your health drops to 0 and you become exhausted, your character's gone. And then you're essentially re-rolling, right? As someone who's played a lot of Diablo 3, and when Diablo, if you don't know, is an action RPG from Blizzard, it's a really old running series, and they were one of the games at the time to release, especially online, a hardcore variant where you would play a character and you could select it to be a hardcore character. And for any reason, if that character died, it was gone forever. You could never get it back. You could whine and complain to Blizzard all you wanted. It was gone. And you kind of got used to playing that way. And what it did was it made the game so much more exciting. It was brutal because you would lag or something would happen. You'd get disconnected and you'd log back in to find the ghosty screen. And your character's just a ghost because it's dead and it died during that lag, and it's so unfair. But that's part of signing up to having a hardcore character. So it's really cool that they've implemented a variant of that into this. I don't know how many people have done it. I love the idea of it. I just think realistically, constantly rerolling characters and going through that all the time is going to get kind of tedious, potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a really cool idea, and I'd love to hear someone else record a podcast about their campaign of Frosthaven in hardcore mode.
Yeah.
But I would never want to do it.
Mm.
It's definitely something that I'd love to hear the stories because they become so epic.
Yes.
Because I know exactly what you're talking about from that Diablo 3 thing, because I remember when I started playing that on hardcore, which I thought was ridiculous, by the way, because I remember never wanting to do hardcore in Diablo 2, but that's back because when that came out, like, we live in Australia, so our internet connection was like basically a potato, right? So you were guaranteed to just die from lag.
Yeah.
But 10 years later, it's slightly improved, and we're kind of at pumpkin status now.
Yeah.
So it's doable, and you still die from lag, but it's not as often. But yeah, that idea is really cool because you go into every engagement and every encounter with this fear of death, right? Of death, and I just don't know how feasible it would be, because you could probably get in a position where you start spiraling out of control, right? Like you lose a level 3 or 4 character and go back to 1, and then you'd be kind of a little bit reckless, and then that could just lead on to that again and again and again. And maybe it works when you get to a certain level of, I imagine it's prosperity in Frosthaven that allows you to start at a higher level. Maybe there becomes less of a penalty then because you're starting at that 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever. And that could be okay, but I don't know. But I'd love to hear from anyone who started this, just been like, you know what, Frosthaven, we're doing it hardcore from like mission 1. Let's go.
How about we say this? If there's enough interest, I'll buy a second copy and we'll do a hardcore run.
Yeah, sure. With my second life that I'm also going.
That's right.
Yeah, great. Cool.
I'll play your character. I'll just say, what do you want it to do this time, and I'll
just say die.
Yeah. Now there's a couple more in there, but they're kind of like they're just random scenarios how you can set it up for infinite replayability, I guess. Now a couple of the ones that I found online, right? Someone's talking about it being a cooperative team game. And the fact that, a lot of the wording around the characters is we're not some big happy band of friendly Care Bear people. We're a band of selfish mercenaries, right? And this is, important when it comes to the looting system and all of that. But some people don't like that part, and they want to go down, losing collective gold when an event or a city event says, losing collective gold, but it doesn't have any kind of built-in resolution system. But damage is done. What do you do about ties? Changing the mindset about, all that kind of stuff, or taking turns doing the chests instead of always letting, the quickest, greediest guy doing it. But ultimately, yeah, they're talking a little bit about Gloomhaven as a cooperative game and doing everything in a very peaceful, cooperative kind of environment.
Yeah, it's really funny because you read online through the dynamics of different people's play groups, and it could be through board gaming, it could be through role playing. I've been amazingly lucky in my life that I've had role-playing groups and board gaming groups with just my best friends, right? So it's never been an issue, and it's almost been as much of a social event for my entire life of doing those things as it has been about playing an actual game. So it's been great. But you read about people who just haven't had that opportunity. Maybe they haven't had a lot of close friends that are into those type of things, and they really struggle to get these groups together. But there's a part of me that would love to read the ongoing saga of a group of 4 people who really don't get along that well and all want to play Gloomhaven or Frosthaven. Because I feel like when it comes to, okay, we need to lose 5 gold, and you just have 4 people go, nope, 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 nope. And then what? There's no narrator to drive you forward, right?
That's right. If you can't decide in 1 minute, you all lose 5 gold each. There's nothing.
That's you have these situations in role-playing games where the DM or GM will just enforce some form of decision of like, well, if you guys don't make a decision, then there's something bad's going to happen, right? The game would just stall, and I'm sure, and it pains me to believe this is true, but I'm sure it is true, that there are some unfinished Gloomhaven campaigns out there because there have been decision points that people have got really grumpy about, and that has just been it, right?
Yeah, they're just, we're not continuing this until we can come to a decision as to who's going to divvy up this 5 gold. I'm not taking that extra hit.
Correct. Yes, exactly. And what I've noticed, we've made jokes about this the few times it's come up in our campaign, is that they all seem to be not divisible by 4 numbers. So you gain 15 gold, you lose 15 gold, or 5. And you go, come on, Isaac. Like, but you know what he's doing. He's like, make some hard decisions, right?
Yeah.
So.
And for some people, that would be crippling.
Yes, that's exactly it. Because you hear about these situations. So I think, it's an interesting call out. I think we've spoken before, or you've mentioned some house rules that people use to divvy that stuff up, like so chests or gold, or how they do that, which I think is probably, those groups trying to solve for those problems that they think they're going to run into, so that they don't run into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it keeps your campaign going and it drives it forward and everyone can have fun, then again, I've said it before, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Number 2 is very similar to number 1. It actually links to it, but it's all about battle goals, right? This particular group, all right, and some people agree and some people don't with all of these points, right? They're showing everyone, and they're sharing battle goals. As in, I need to do this, I need to do this. And they're cooperatively making sure that everyone can complete their battle goals within a given scenario, right? Because, if one person can't do it, for whatever reason, it's not fun to watch everyone else get theirs and, you're unable to get yours. So, maybe...
you can tell us about that, can't you?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, aren't we all like miles ahead on our battle goals and our ticks, and you're not?
This is very good. This is a really good example of that, because people are saying, getting perks is having fun. That's the one, and you don't want to miss out on that fun. As someone who is really a fair bit behind in terms of my perks and my ticks, which, by the way, means I've got one modifier, like one perk less than everyone else. I'm like 4 ticks off, but still, I don't really care. Because I know that there's going to be a catch up in there somewhere where someone's maxed out, but they're still completing their battle goals, and there's nothing for them, right? Once you complete your battle, all your perks, the battle goals, there's nothing in there of, you get 10 gold instead because you've run out of perks to actually get. There's nothing in the game. I'm happy to be proven wrong. but there's nothing there. Whereas I will still get to get mine and continue towards mine. I don't believe that everything has to be symmetrically balanced. And just because you're getting to, level up, etc., why can't I? It's just part of the game. They're the decisions that are made. And I actually enjoy some of the selfishness that comes from some of the battle goals when someone does something a little bit weird and it throws things off. I think it's part of the overall enjoyment for us, for me anyway. That's just the way I have fun with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the question I'll ask you then is just to play devil's avocado, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between sharing information at the start of the scenario and saying, hey, this is what I've got, this is what I've got, let's all work together to make sure we can help it, right? Like, say, I need to open a door while there's still things on there.
Yeah.
Or I need to kill one of each monster, versus saying during the thing, hey, do you mind not killing that thing because I need to kill it? What's the difference?
I think one is blatantly explaining what's exactly needed, and the other one is table talk. Which I think table talk, where you're like, please don't kill it, I need that. Then you can make reference to it, not I need one of every creature, guys. I need that one, I need that one, I need that one.
Yeah, so you basically, as long as you don't spell it out at the start, you're fine. But if someone goes to do something that you want to do instead, it's okay to. And remember, I'm just playing the opposite here, right? I don't agree with this stance. I'm just asking the question for fun.
It hasn't actually happened.
It has.
When?
Remember
How?
the first scenario when I was just like, "Hey, can you not kill that?" And then
that was for a journal. That was for your journal. It wasn't for your battle goal.
Yeah, exactly. But
well, I just took that as something different because that was maybe on a larger, important scale than a tiny little perk tick. So that's why I feel like, oh, that's fine. Since then, it hasn't really happened. No one's really said, oh, please don't hit that or anything like that for a battle goal, or let me open that door. We're kind of, I think it's part of the puzzle. It's a spanner in the works, and it's part of your puzzle of going, crap, I also need to get this done. I need to position myself, at the front to open the door first.
Yeah.
And, if to do it that way. So that I'm very big on keeping them a secret. I think it also gives more player agency. I like hidden things. Otherwise, yeah, the more open it is, the more it can be planned out by other people. And I like being responsible for making some of the decisions that mostly, affect me. And the battle goals is that.
Yeah, and like, just to be clear, I agree with you. I was just putting you in a position to talk about, because I think the thing is, and I can see where the argument gets made, is that telling everyone what you've got at the start versus during the campaign saying, can you please not do this, or can I do this, or hey, such and such. I think there's a fine line between the two, because you are still basically saying what you want to do. So I can see why the argument can be made, well, why don't we just share them at the start? Again, that's not what I want to do, but it's kind of adjacent. So
think of it this way. On that, I remember sometimes when we finished a scenario, we've kept the battle goals we didn't pick next to our desk, and sometimes we'll reveal them, and it'll be something along the lines of, kill a creature before it reacts, right? And the person has not selected that because they didn't feasibly think that they could do it. Now, technically, we could all make that happen, right? I go first, I weaken it a little bit, etc., and then he goes in. But we're intentionally all collectively are under the that assumption that we kind of have to make it happen ourselves and keep it a secret, which is why people aren't picking those, despite the fact that they could technically be quite easy to do.
Well, 100%. If you were sharing all information on battle goals, you'd always pick the best ones, like 2 ticks, because you could always make sure they happened. Like it's really, like, sometimes it might take a little bit of maneuvering, but yeah, 100%. You would pick different ones, and again, we pick ours based on the fact that we need to accomplish them in secret. Right? Like, yeah, I agree. And you do look at some saying, no, I can't do that one. So yeah, you're right. If that was the case, we'd do it.
I think there's an umbrella here where a lot of these situations are under, we can make things easier and we could be ticking off perks left, right, and center and making our deck stronger, or we can do it that one time because it feels so much better when it's harder to get. And I feel so much more rewarded by that. It's kind of like when we play by the rules as intended. We beat a hard scenario. We know we didn't have to tweak it in any way to make it easier. It's so much more satisfying, at least. Then, amazing. We just smashed that.
Yeah, and it would also become a little bit are more procedural. So it would almost be like the battle goals become sub-objectives of the mission in order for you to continue, which kind of would add to what you need to do, but it also would mean that if you didn't do them, there'd be feel bads, where normally if you don't do your battle goal, there's not. But you also wouldn't be feeling, like you said, that yes, I pulled this off, like I managed to do this really hard one, like whether it's a true tick or not. For example, like I think in the second mission, you had one that meant you had to use a ability on an ally, like a heal, every single rest, right? Something along those lines. That one there, if you open information, isn't stressful because everyone's just gathering around you, right? To make sure you can do it. You'd be like, oh, I haven't done my thing yet. I'll come over here and I'll heal you. Whereas that you were doing it in secret, and we were all wondering why you just weren't doing anything. It's like, and then that came again and again and again. Like, if we knew that you were picking the don't kill anyone, don't do any damage, don't interact with the enemies or help with the objective type battle goals that you like to choose, well, it wouldn't be a mystery as to why you're just kind of rolling around not doing anything.
Yeah. This next one I find not good for me, right? Along with a lot of these. But the idea is that you reshuffle your attack modifier deck when you pull your crit, but you leave your crit in the discard pile. And then you draw through until you pull your null, and then your null goes into the discard pile, and your crit goes back into your pile when you reshuffle it. So you're always cycling between your crit and your null. So that way it gives you a little bit more information about what's coming, not so much the next card, but you can't draw your null because it's in your discard. So your next reshuffle thing is going to be a crit, and it lets you play tactfully or differently. Like, because drawing your null 5 times is terrible. But also drawing nothing but crits over and over again is not as fun either, right?
Well, what do you mean it's not as fun?
Well, it would be way more fun. Like, definitely, because obviously maybe some weird shufflings going on in there. But this is a way to make it more even, I guess.
Yeah, that's and no offense to anyone doing this, but that's really weird. Like, that's such a weird way to try and mitigate the randomness. And I think that the variant that you read out earlier of just removing the null and crit and replacing with a +2, -2 is just a better way of doing that if that's what you're worried about. It just seems overly manufactured, right? Like, you could come up with other things and say, all right, well, if you draw your crit, you've got to mark a 1 down on a piece of paper, and then if you draw your null, then it's equal, but you can only ever draw a null or a crit 1 more than the other one has been drawn, and then it doesn't count. Like, I'm sure if you wanted to, you could find some really weird ways of doing it, but I think just do it as per normal or do it as per the variant. I don't know if...
Yeah, that was beautiful, though. You should really consider designing a game.
No, that sounds like a nightmare.
Their reasoning is, though, that you get to see more of your deck, and then you shuffle less. Because they said that they've...
Okay, yeah, no.
They've retired some of their characters without ever seeing any of their perk cards.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it's still weird. I still wouldn't play with it, but now I see the reasons more. Look, again, I feel like if you're doing that, then you play with the variant. Although, to clarify, with the variant of the +2, -2 instead of the crit and null, do you still reshuffle when you draw that? Okay, that's dumb. Why would you do that? Just make it so you don't reshuffle. You go through your whole deck, right?
Well, pretty much, right?
Seems to me makes sense. Yeah, look, I agree that there's cool cards that you put in your deck, and if you keep drawing your crit or your miss, which I mean obviously are pretty cool, but there's other cool cards, so that your class might want. There could be item refreshers. I know with your drifter you've got like move your little doobie whackers up and down or something like that, and I feel like you could get like restrained from being able to use those, or restrained is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. So yeah, okay, I see that side of things a little bit more than just the miss and the crit kind of coming up too often.
Yeah, I still hate it.
Oh, I'm like, I went slightly higher in that I could see why you'd do that. I still wouldn't do that, but it's not as weird as I first thought. You should have led with that.
No. These are little caveats that kick in. I get to
No,
get your raw emotion followed by, here's a little bit more information.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is the
great.
Viper pit you were warning me about earlier. Yeah.
One of them was called Critical Miss, where it's, very frustrating to miss. And it's extra frustrating when you throw a lost card out, which is generally a one-time ability, right? And they're saying that they're relatively crucial to success in a scenario. And it's really unsatisfying to lose a lost card because you miss. So whenever you miss, if the action was a single target and would be lost, it goes into your discard instead.
I think that's really clever. I don't know if I would play with it again, just purely because we're trying to just play it as pure, and we've talked about the reasons why that at length. I like that though from a fun perspective. So
Yeah, okay.
there is there's a sense that you can burn cards and achieve nothing because you just got unlucky. And I think one of the things that the Gloomhaven Frosthaven franchise does extremely well is it allows you to mitigate your luck for the most part. Like it's not a no luck game, but it definitely is you have so many decisions that the luck doesn't just choose your fate. And you could get those situations, where you use a big card, has a single target attack, and then you just don't get the ability. Well, I guess the difference is that usually those big burn cards that have single targets have other effects in addition to the damage. So
when you miss, you still get your status effects, right? You still get those.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're still going to get XP.
But I'm sure that there's going to be classes where unlock that are like, hey, my thing is pure single target damage. And so you could have a burn card that's a 4, 5, 6, 7 attack, right? And that in itself is just doing that damage, and pulling a miss on that is way worse than another burn card that's like, hey, do 3 damage but wound everything. And you'd be like, oh, well, the damage is really negligent. I'm just trying to wound everything, really. So, I think that's a clever way of doing it. It becomes weird, though, when you start asking, why does it have to only be for single target attacks? So, if you have a 2-target card, right, hit 2 targets for a decent amount of damage, and you pull a miss on one of them, right, and then you pull -2 on the other one, well, you pretty much didn't do much. So do you get to not burn it then?
No. I think it's still a burn because you still, according to this variant, it's single target. But no, I think a big part of the game is literally, and we went through this, right? When we did scenario 9, the most recent one, right towards the end, and there were 2 creatures left, and I was halfway through my modified deck. It's just big time part of it, and it's part of that tension, and it's part of that thing. I hate the idea in a way of just being able to like, no, cool, I know that if I pull my miss, I still get this card. I still have enough health. I still have enough cards to, cycle through until I do it again. I like that all in, that all in on this move, and knowing that even if you got one miss, you're most likely not going to miss. But when it happens, it's just, yes, it's unlucky and it sucks, right? It really, really sucks. But that's the game.
Yeah. It's there's an old I think it's D&D 4th edition, which was very different to a lot of the other editions, and you had a whole bunch of abilities, but some of them were usable less frequently. And I believe there was a rule in that, and if you missed with one of your like really, really big things that it didn't exhaust. From that perspective, I may be misremembering exactly how that worked, but it was around like a fun thing. Or maybe that's like what I thought it should work. But this basically sounds like, I don't mind it, but I wouldn't play with it. I don't hate it as much as you clearly do.
When I say I hate any of these, I hate it purely from an idea of playing with it. If I was sitting on a group and they were suggesting a lot of these, I would sit there and hate it. I would hate the game. I would not be having a good time. And that's why none of these, I don't want to change anything about, the rules as written with our games. But if I'm looking at it from their point of view and someone's telling me, oh, we do this and we're having a blast, an absolute blast, of course, go for it. At the end of the day, it's your money, it's your game, it's your fun, right? Do whatever, makes the game more enjoyable for the whole group.
Yeah.
Complete power to them.
I know, and we've talked about that before. What's funny is that if I ever suggest ideas about how things could be modified in games to Detty, even if I am just talking about random stuff without actually any idea, like trying to implement it. I can already see the steam started coming out of his ears and his
I
face
know.
starts turning red. It's like, don't mess with the game. The game's made exactly how it's supposed to be made.
I am so
I,
passionate about that.
I know, and I love you for it. And I think that's where that's kind of shining through a little bit here. Like I love the ideas that people are coming up with. I wouldn't play with any of these that you've suggested so far. And just so everybody knows, I have no idea what Detty's reading out. Like I haven't read this beforehand. I'm hearing these for the first time. So
No, these are just very interesting things that I've found, and I know that I always value your opinion as to how you can see into things differently to me, and that's why I like gaming with you. Is that I get a different vantage point, a different view of a mechanic or something, and you sometimes turn my brain around on something, and you're like, no, if you think about it this dirty, and I'm just like, oh wow, you're actually right. That's actually pretty cool. But I am very stubborn when it comes to something like, nope. People who design these games and they play test them and they come up with all that. If the game is garbage because the mechanics don't make sense and people have nutted and mathed all that out and they say it's solved, yeah, it's a bad game. But this is, based off one of the best highly ranked board games. Isaac can do no wrong here. I don't care what anyone says.
All right. Anyway, what have we got next? What's next on the list?
Email me, Isaac. So we got better reactive cards. So retaliate, all right? If it's in an active zone, you can insist almost to have a taunt with it. When you have, so let me read it out, right? A character with a retaliate card in its active zone, all right, may insist to be focused by a melee attack, when an equidistant ally would be focused instead due to initiative order. A character with a shield card in its active zone may insist to be focused by a ranged attack when an equidistant ally would be focused instead due to initiative order. If multiple equidistant characters insist to be focused, the lower initiative attracts focus, which in turn makes reactive retaliate and shields more reliable and tactical.
I think that's, again, really clever, and I feel like that should just be a mechanic in the game on some cards.
So not all retaliate cards, but for like the tanky, clear, I don't know, what the Banner Spear might be like, has one that's kind of like everyone has to focus this.
Yeah.
But only for that, which makes it more unique.
Yeah, something like treat your initiative as a 1 for targeting purposes.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I think the only problem you'd have, and I don't want to go too far down the game design rabbit hole here, but the only problem you'd have is that it's not been played yet. So if it's not been played, then it doesn't count. So if I play, it's got 20 initiative and something goes at 15, then none of the cards I've played matter for what they're going to do. So you'd need some form of way of overriding that. And whether that might be a buff, maybe there is a character that has like a buff, that a persistent ability. It's like treat any abilities that have shield or have retaliate as though you have one lower than the lowest player character or something like that, right? If they aren't there, then I imagine that in the next thing, Grasshaven, that'll be the next one, right? We had Gloomhaven, we had Frosthaven, next will be Grasshaven or Spacehaven. I feel like that'll be a class there. So
I feel like those kind of those abilities, shields and retaliates, like we've used them, both you and myself, in different scenarios to good effect, provided we go early enough and the enemies aren't healing or doing something where they're just standing there doing nothing. I don't believe that they need to add something else onto that, because otherwise they become a little bit more brainless and less about timing and picking the right moment to be in the right position to use it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is a timing puzzle to using them. Most of the cards that you want people to focus you have lower initiative. I say most, that's so arbitrary, but a lot of them that I know of do. I think that, yeah, you're right. It's probably taking a step too far. The shield one is a weird one. Like anything with a ranged attack will target people with shields. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Again, I think it's really clever on a way of making things like shield and retaliate, really kind of focusing those tank roles from within the group. I know that as well, there's a bit of an issue with retaliate at higher levels. At least there was in Gloomhaven. It tends to drop off a fair bit just because health goes way up. So retaliate 2, retaliate 3 doesn't really.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then things are hitting harder, so you can take less hits So, not that that fixes anything, but it might mean that you can play around with it a little bit more. So,
Mm,
yeah, that's an interesting one, though.
yeah. The next one's about summons because everyone loves summons. Now, these more ones are not Frosthaven related; they're more about Gloomhaven, right? But you can sort of move them along to Frosthaven as well. So each character controls his own summons, but may only have one summon in play. A new summon removes any older ones from play. Summons have their own initiative. I mean, this is obviously going to be a big problem in Frosthaven. Summons have their own initiative dictated by the initiative of their controller's other card that was played and was not used for initiative. Hence, no action during a long rest. This helps to remove AI clunkiness and restricts abuse to just one in play, but makes the summons able to attack in the same round.
That's like this sounds like a different class. Like that.
Yes.
But it's when you started reading it, I was just like, oh yeah, I think I've heard of the idea of controlling your summons before. Oh no, wait, you only get one. Oh wait, and they go at the initiative of your second card. And okay, so they just are completely reworked. So
Yeah.
and look, we can talk a little bit to Frosthaven. Seeing all of the classes in Gloomhaven, and I don't want to spoil things for people who haven't played it, but there is a summoning type character in there that their thing is having lots of them, and there is another character that only gets one. So I feel like that's and
It's
they
not
play
factoring in it from a blanketing point of view.
correct. I mean, and those two characters play completely differently, right? Even though they're under the umbrella of summoners. The I guess if we're looking at the only Frosthaven class we've seen with summons, although that's not true because Phil, the Deathwalker,
Yeah.
Deathwalker does have a summon, but with the Bone Shaper, I feel like that would just be a massive nerf to the Bone Shaper. Like even controlling your summon, right, and having them attack the turn they come out is not a benefit for the fact that he usually has 2 or 3 running around.
As someone who doesn't really play with summons, it's so hard for me. Even if I go back to Vermling Mind Thief from Gloomhaven, the very, very, very beginning, I never used the rat, right? I never used the summon because it was kind of like a lost card. You get it out, it's got an X amount of health. Oh, it's dead, it's gone. It just always felt bad. And I'm sure there were builds around summons. I do know that, and look, I don't know if we can spoil Gloomhaven in here. I don't know if anyone's actually listening that like have.
Spoiler warning, jump forward 15 seconds if you
I don't know.
haven't played
Okay, I'm
Gloomhaven.
just gonna go. There's a pet class, right? It's mostly one from. I don't know which one it is. I just know that it's got one. Would this break that class? Giving complete control.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would. I mean, you end up with a lot more control anyway because of the way the cards work. So that's why I was said at the start, and jokingly, but it sounds like a different class because the summon character that has one summon and kind of channels most of their power through that thing. I'm trying to be super vague here in case anyone hasn't played it. Is a lot of their cards refer to making that summon do things. So you end up not having a lot of turns on your main character and you play this through this extra summon. So being able to completely control what it does, would just make it even better. Because there are weird situations you get in where it goes to attack someone you didn't want it to because it always goes before you, right? So it goes and moves over there and hits this monster and you're like, I didn't want them to hit that monster. Now I've got to move it somewhere else. So just giving control will just make it not broken, but it would just be even better. And it's already a decent class.
Okay.
So yeah.
The next one is around healing. If a figure heals in excess of lost health, that figure can move 1 for each 2 excess health healed, which apparently adds a bit more utility to long resting. And the Tinkerer's Healing, which is enhancing the class and makes healing cards more attractive.
Well, that's again. I mean, this must be from people who have played this a lot, right? Like you didn't play Gloomhaven for the first time in scenario one.
I need this.
I need to change this. Yeah. So I respect the fact that this has probably come out of like a lot of playing and figuring that out because that's so. In my head
as well.
Yeah, like if you heal over for every 2 points, you get 1 movement. Like that's. But I mean, yeah. Again, that sounds cool. I like it. I like it. Again, I wouldn't play with it because I don't think that it needs to. But Yeah, I feel like there is a point where the healing does probably lose a little bit of power. Again, just due to the way that the game scales. HP scales, heals don't really scale that well, things like that. So,
Having this conversation with you, with some of these out loud, has got me wondering whether or not Isaac's ever scoured the forums and gone, I can design a class around that.
look, this is the variance in the classes in Gloomhaven. I am expecting the same thing in Frosthaven, right? Like, I feel like we're going to get a lot of different classes that work really differently. And I would be surprised if there weren't some cards that do some of these things. Just, if they don't, they definitely should, because I think maybe not entire rule changes, but these are definitely cool, like, sub abilities or bonuses to these types of cards.
Yeah.
Like, I think they sound really cool. So kudos to the people who have thought of these and put them into their game, because they sound like really cool design kind of spaces to explore. But as general blanket rules across the whole game, I don't. I think it maybe changes too much. But
even on that point, remember there's times it's like, who needs healing? I'm playing a heal. No one needs healing. Oh, who would like healing and to move slightly to the left? Because that's what is going to happen with this variant, right? You heal for 2 on that person who's on full health. All of a sudden, hey, you got a free move. You might as well do it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. There are a lot of times that granting someone a movement, especially if you can go before them, is super advantageous, right? Like, it almost and it breaks the economy of the game, and not in a negative way, in a like that kind of like I'm slightly getting more out of my turn than I should, when you don't need to play a bottom to move. It's like the melee characters that will move into combat, do a thing, the next turn stand next to it and have like a bottom attack, top attack. It's really efficient because you're kind of getting all these attacks out. If somebody can move you, and there's a few classes in Gloomhaven that actually can grant movement abilities, playing a bunch of Gloomhaven, we've made use of those. It can be really powerful because you can say, hey, can you give me a move? And even if it's just move 2 or 3, you go, yeah, and then you get to play another move card and really book it across the room.
Just ice skate across.
Yeah. But with those things as well, like jump boots, for example, work when someone grants you a move, because it's just any movement. So again, it can just help you get past obstacles. There's a lot of utility that comes with giving someone a move. And if the healing just naturally had that in, it would be a really cool and powerful thing to be able to add to your decision space. So
yeah. Next one is called more tactics. Now we're getting towards the end of the list. Okay, a ranged attack will suffer disadvantage if an enemy is adjacent, so it's considered engaged, not just when attacking at range 1. A melee attack gains advantage when an ally occupies the opposite side's hex, flanking.
Okay,
More
so
homage to D&D 3.5. Ranged is always so they say ranged is always more boring due to a lack of threat, and flanking maneuvers will add more tactics. Note monsters are programmed to optimize damage, hence will flank where possible, hence it is equally a disadvantage with higher numbers faced. So right now, obviously, if you're next to something and they want to attack you with a ranged attack, disadvantage. But just by being next to them, they will have disadvantage on all their attacks.
So the flanking one makes sense from what you explained. So just to re-go over the ranged one. So if you use a ranged attack and there is an enemy in adjacent to you, in melee to you, then regardless of who you attack, that attack
has disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean,
but same against the monsters.
Yeah, okay. So again, yeah, it sounds fine. Like, I don't think that it breaks or changes anything. It definitely does add a little bit more of a tactical element to where you want to move to. It has advantages for helping allies maneuver around to fight the same thing. So, jumping over something to be on the other side of it and then having someone come in and attack it is advantageous, like, no pun intended. So there is benefits of that, and the range one's a bit weird, but I mean, yeah, it seems fine, but it just means if you're ranged, then you have to make sure you stay out of melee combat. So
I like that it adds a little extra look, it makes it interesting. But it's I think it'll just add more complexity for complexity's sake to definitely make it cool.
I think it would definitely make it harder. Like,
Mm.
well, I can't say definitely. I feel like thinking about how the monsters act and how many monsters there are, the fact that they're probably going to be getting advantage more often than you're going to be getting advantage, because just purely because there's more monsters.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be make the game a little bit harder. And it might only just make it harder for characters that really want to get into the thick of it. It might not just make it harder for everyone. So if you've got a character that wants to front line and get attacked by 2 or 3 monsters because you've got shields or retaliates or just whatever, right? That suddenly now becomes worse because there's a good chance that 2 or 3 of those are going to get advantage, which means you're going to take more damage.
Oh, well, if you're going to do this, you may as well add attack of opportunity as well, right?
Yeah, sure. It had an entire action rulebook, right? So yeah.
This one's for journal. All right, your life goals. Okay, party kills count towards half a kill towards your life goals. So you're gonna kill 15 of these things, right? If people you're not killing anything, but your party's killing them, each one counts towards your life goal.
Yeah. This one is fine if you want to retire faster. Sure, why not? If you don't
want to retire
to,
faster, just say you retire and pick a new character. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably for people who don't want to just say that, right? Like, I don't think there's a problem with that necessarily, because it can be a little bit fiddly to get killing blows with certain characters. Especially, there can be some weird combinations of getting a certain retirement goal or whatever they're called with a certain type of character, and you don't always know what that character's about when you do it, right? Because you get it when you make it. So you go, oh, I've got this character, and then you go, oh, I'll pick this one, and then you realize that all you do is throw out debuffs and heal people, and you're like, oh, this is going to be tricky for me to kill 85 vermlings. So I can see that being appealing. The only negative with it is that, like, I myself use those type of battle goal, what are they called? Retirement goal.
Yeah.
Journals. Yeah. I use those specific ones as a way of controlling when I retire.
Yeah.
Because I just won't kill that thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and then I can never retire. So if I want to play a character, I do it, and then when I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with this. Let's go to a mission that I can kill these things.
Okay. The last one for a house rule, wound stacking.
What, as in, like, every time something gets a wound, they tick more damage, like 2 damage.
So 2, you can stack statuses. So 3 wounds on this target, provided it doesn't heal, it's going to take 3 damage at the start of its turn.
Wow. Sure, I guess. Like, make not much of a difference unless you've got a wound stacking character, and then that becomes OP. Like,
yeah, look, I don't know. It was just it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
some of the threads of these, it's very funny to watch the quote after quote after quote, and the people would just absolutely crapping down someone's throat about something. I've seen one person get banned from the forum. Like, 1 minute he's just having a go at everyone and trolling everyone, and then next minute the mods come in and just go, nope, you out. If you can't play nice. It's just it's really amusing.
Yeah, and look, I love that people get so passionate about it, but I really wish that people wouldn't shit on other people's streams. Like, there's one thing to say, no, this is the way the game's supposed to be played, and that's perfectly fine. It's another thing for someone to say, hey, I've been doing this thing with my group and we found it really fun. You know, just FYI, in case anyone else wanted to try it.
Yeah.
Not telling people this is the way the game should be. If you go out there with a house rule and you say, I think Isaac made the game wrong and it should work like this, then yes, you are opening yourself up to criticism. Like, you need to stay in your lane and do what you want if that's what you want, but don't tell everyone else that they're playing it wrong because they're playing it by the rules. But if the conversation is, hey, I had this idea and I think it'll fix this thing that I think is a problem and we've done it and it works, right? Or even just, what do people think? I don't think that's opening yourself up to people to stomp on your face, because I think that's just rude. But then I just think people should be better humans in general, right? Like, I just think be nice to people.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's
Well,
a
it's the internet,
That's a
right?
conversation for a completely different time.
Yeah,
But
we'll cover that next week.
yeah.
Now, two positives. Oh, not positives, sorry. Two things that I read that I was like, interesting. I don't hate it as much as I hate other things.
As much
I
as
don't,
I've
I
heard
don't,
all these other ideas.
I don't know how much I'd want to put it into my
So
game.
while we were talking about stomping on people's faces, anyone who just came up with any of those house rules, by the way, you should be feeling the burn right now.
No, it's not burn. I hate it for me. Okay. All chests require a loot action to get. You can't just end your turn on them.
Why?
Don't know. Harder. I like harder. I don't know what it
Ah.
is. I like just make it stupidly more annoying, and then I'll complain when we haven't got any loot chests.
Yeah. The only like I mean, again, if that's how the game worked, that would be what you would plan around. The only problem I see with that is that there's characters that just don't have loot cards.
Really?
Or well, you build your character and you choose, right? You choose your cards. Some characters don't have good access to loot cards, so you might have a loot one as a bottom, which is probably the average. But if the top isn't really good, you probably don't take that card. Like you just don't choose it because
But
unless
if you know this is a rule, you bring it for that one reason.
that's what I'm saying, right? Like if you know if that was the rule and wasn't a variant or a house rule, if that was the rule, I think that you would definitely see the reason why you'd want to pick those cards. But I also feel like there would be more loot cards, or at least more focus on those loot cards. So the top action of a card that had a loot one at the bottom would probably be better. Because then you'd be like, look, this is not going to be very helpful often, but you're going to need this because you don't want to miss a chest.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think that it needs to be. I'm not as excited somehow why you're excited about that one. That's
I don't know
random.
either. There's
Out of
something wrong with me.
all of those
Something
ones,
wrong
you're like,
with
yeah,
me.
you know what? Making it so we can
How
never
good is that?
loot chests again. Yeah. So I don't understand why you like that one.
Okay,
but
never
I
mind.
can definitely, if that was the rule, you'd have to make changes around it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if I like one and now you're the internet guy who's being mean to me because I happen to like that one and think it was kind of cool.
I'm not being mean to you. I'm just questioning your sanity, and
I was just a little bit hypocritical, is all I'm saying. All right, the last one, which is also in my basket of, that's pretty cool. All right, so what guys think.
So now my radar on this stuff is way off because I thought these were going to be like really cool, and you've just pulled out that one. So
only reshuffle the battle goals once all have been drawn.
Oh, that's cool. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, get to see different goals more often. You're not going to keep pulling the same ones. I think that one makes more sense for Gloomhaven because there's less, like a lot less. Whereas you see the deck is bigger in Frosthaven, so it's not as needed. Like we don't see many that are overlapping over and over again in our games.
What about a variant of that variant in that you only shuffle? So hang on, I just got to word this right. You take out the ones that you chose for that mission, but you put back in the ones you didn't choose and shuffle.
Yeah, okay.
Because otherwise, because we're drawing three, you could burn one and not on purpose. You say, I don't like this one, but then no one else gets to experience it. It doesn't get a chance of being in the game because it's just got not chosen, right? Whereas that if it's just take away the 4 that we chose for that mission, they can't come up again, and then we shuffle the deck with the ones that are remaining, and you'd slowly work through it that way. I actually think that would be pretty cool.
Actually, this is probably the only one that I don't think is too drastically changing of the game, and you know, like changing modifier decks or anything like that. It's just giving more variance to the battle goal system, right?
It probably makes it harder. So if we think
that's why I like it.
Yeah, that's probably why you like. You didn't realize that making it harder, but now you're like, and simply because you're going to choose the easier ones to achieve when you choose a battle goal, and if you are not choosing it, then it's probably a little bit more hard, or it's more complex, and therefore that's going to go back into the deck, and we're going to end up with those hard ones at some point. But because you draw 3. I think hard for a battle goal is kind of relative to the character. Yeah. Like Calvin's pulled a couple that you just like, there's no way you should choose that one. You're never going to take damage, so don't choose it. There's the kind of one where if you drew it, you'd be like, yeah, totally, I'll take that. So
yeah, okay. I've just before we wrap it up, I've now come up with my own, right? To go on this, I've come up. This is the Detty house rule variant that we're gonna try at least once. All right, and it is when
It
you
didn't-
get.
you can't pick it up on audio, but I just rolled my eyes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw it. Now, when you get your battle goal, you don't actually choose it. You pick one at random, and then just like Hanabi, you face it outwards. So my battle goal, I can't see what it is, but everyone else at the table can. They can't tell me what it is, but they can motion with their eyes when I'm pointing to what I want to attack. Or if I want to open a door, they're like, that one. They're nodding their head, or they're like, and they're shaking their head. And I'm like, okay, cool. Should I heal myself? Should I? And it just becomes no one can see their own battle goal. But if you succeed, it's worth 1 bonus tick. I hate that it's silent right now.
I don't want to play Frosthaven with you.
That's so mean.
I didn't say,
like,
I didn't say I didn't like the rule, and I didn't stomp on your face. I just choose not to be part of the group that you're playing with.
okay, we're gonna try that one day. We're gonna do Hanabi battle goals.
Yeah, you can do that when you're soloing the hardcore mode.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on a very special episode of A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly. We will be back on. Well, we'll be playing the next scenario, which I don't know what it is yet, on Monday. It's a public holiday here, so we're going to be able to maybe get 2 out of the way.
Nah, we'll just get 3 attempts at the one mission. We'll just get to fail something 3 times and feel like 3 times as bad.
Provided we get to do Detty's battle goal roulette, I don't really mind. Or one of these other weird ones that wound stacking, but only on Gaz.
Oh, that means my wounds would stack. I could stack heaps on
You
Phil.
can stack on Phil.
Ah, yes. All right. I think I'm on board with this one now.
Just put 6 on him. Oh, wait, he's
Yeah.
got more than 6 health now, doesn't he?
He'll still
Just
die in a
bad.
couple of turns. Yeah.
So thanks again for joining us. I've been Detty, that's Gaz, and this has been A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly.
And remember, when it comes to rolling terribly, it's all in the wrist.